Well, good afternoon. Hopefully my mic is on. My name is Jen Underwood. Today we're going to be talking about the art of AI storytelling and advancing your data storytelling career and your data storytelling skills to the next level with machine learning models with DataRobot and Tableau. Tomorrow, the related session, this is going to be an introductory to a much longer section on opening the black box of machine learning models, is tomorrow from 9 to 10, and we'll dig into it a bit deeper on this topic. Today I'm just going to do a quick introduction, walk through some example, and recommend some next steps for you. So just to introduce you to the concept, to thrive in a digital era, data-driven organizations need to quickly become AI-driven. And why is this? In the past 15 years, over half of the Fortune 500 have disappeared. Companies are leveraging AI and machine learning just as if they were leveraging that data gap in the past. So we moved from making gut decisions to data decisions. Now we're becoming AI-driven. And if you look at how often, and even the timing here, we really weren't talking much about machine learning and AI until about 2 years ago. And then it started to skyrocket. And the reason why is this is a simulation done by McKinsey on the cash flows, laggards, versus early adopters of machine learning and AI. So just as we had, you think about the gap in competitive advantage, and you hear about this, the breakdown, folks that are using AI and machine learning have outperformed their peers 135% by more cash. So by saving money, by seizing opportunities, you're able to displace your competition and you have more to work with more efficiently. Little bit about DataRobot. We're a visionary in the data science segment for augmented data science and machine learning. And augmented is important because essentially it is still the human. I'll be showing automated machine learning, but the human is still very important throughout every step of the process. Founded in 2012, so a lot of folks are just starting with automated machine learning today. We've been doing this for over 6 years, 7 years now, and working with some of the largest companies in the world, in Japan, in Australia, in EMEA, United States, South America, Africa. We're all over, and we've been doing this a long, long time. I tease you, just add data and hit start. Yeah, it's not that easy. There is a bit more to it. But to get started is fairly simple. What DataRobot will do, you can connect to a data set, you can drag and drop a data set, and I will be showing a demo. It will automatically evaluate hundreds of different algorithms for you with all of the pre-cooked feature engineering and data prep steps optimized for each model. And it will quickly look through the best model and find it for you. From there, that's where you really come in. So no one in the industry has really done a very good job of this. Even when I work with my 200 data scientists today, usually I'll ask, well, that looks really interesting. What does it mean? The log loss of this, and they'll say the ROC curve, and that doesn't mean anything to the business at all. So to really, take your career to the next step and to help business is to bring AI and machine learning into the world they already know. And for you, that's Tableau. And to communicate and translate what these changes mean, what these results and findings mean in terms the business understands. In industry, you're seeing this new role starting to evolve called the AI interpreter. So it might have been the data storyteller of today or business analyst today is now becoming the AI or machine learning interpreter for the organization. So the keys to success will be your ability to translate. And when you think about translation, the concepts of data literacy and understanding what these terms mean and making that important to the business, that's really the key there. There's also an important understanding as machines make decisions automatically, why? You need to describe why it does. And we do this by opening up the black box and saying, well, what really drives those outcomes? So I'll be showing that today. And if you can translate and you can explain why, the reasons behind a prediction, then you'll gain trust in the business. So some of the keys will be, what does that model mean? How does it work? What changes will affect the outcomes? And when you get those answers, of course, you'll need to think about looking again under the box to say, let's make sure there wasn't data that biased that outcome. Does it really reflect the real world that I live in? And those types of things. And as the human, our role with automation is to make sure it's not making mistakes, correcting mistakes, making sure the data reflects the correct business processes, and that we remain ethical with automation. So let's dig into some demos. Anybody want to see some demos? Yeah. All right, so this is an example, and I'm going to dig into the live one here. I'm going to escape out. And we'll dig into the full screen here. This is an example by another fellow Zen master, Bridget Cogley, Will Gray, and Davis. And what we have here are preventative, it's healthcare. We want to predict readmission. So a readmission means if you go to the hospital, did the hospital help you and make you better that you don't have to come back again? And a few days later, maybe a few weeks later, and get readmitted for the same types of problems. Did they really take care of you or not? So what we're looking at here is a dashboard. And what we have here by individual patients are the predictions of the probability of being readmitted to the hospital, also with proactive recommendations of what to do next. And one of the keys here is why. Why did the machine learning model make that prediction? And in here, what Bridget has done is each time making it very easy for the business to select a patient and find different reasons why. So making it very easy for the business to consume predictions but not even have to translate what this means. This has already been translated into their language. The other things that we have here are being able to ask what if. There's a DataRobot extension that allows you to ask questions of the data to get answers and simulate, well, what if we tried a different test, or what if the patient had a different description? So we can look at things, at how many diagnoses do we have. Maybe instead of heart failure, it's kidney failure. And we can update the prediction right within Tableau. And now we have a different set of reasons and answers for this problem. We can add that to a comparison if we want. And we can look at different what-if scenarios. So when you think about democratizing predictive analytics and machine learning, this makes it very easy for the business to consume. Does anyone want to see how I made a model? Yeah, right? So let me show you that. So going into DataRobot, we can connect to data from all sorts of data sources. We can connect to relational databases, we can connect to the cloud, the URL if you have Amazon, maybe it's an S3 file. You can use Hadoop or Spark is really very popular with our accounts, and local files. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and use, it's a local file here. And we're going to go ahead and open up this one. And as I open up this file, I can go ahead and I'm going to bump it up to have 20 processes running at a single time. So it will give me some extra power to really do this very quickly. What DataRobot is going to do automatically is what we would have as data analysts working on a machine learning or predictive analytics problem in the past would have done manually. It's going to be doing some exploratory data analysis, looking for the profiles of your data. We'll look for the distributions, the mins and the max values, how many, the counts of values, looking for outliers in the data set, and trying just this really quick way of exploring it. And you can take a look at that if you want to look at that in the data itself, but look at the sources and some of the information here. But to create a model is actually pretty simple. We want to predict, you want to put in your outcome. What do you want the machine to predict from your historical data? So machine learning learns from your historical data to create a model that will predict, when you send future data through it, the outcomes. At this point, I could click the start button, but one thing that makes DataRobot a bit unique is it's easy enough for a non-PhD in data science, which would be me. I only have 2 years of training. And if you are a PhD, you can go crazy under the advanced options with all sorts of added things. For this, we're not going to do that. We're just going to be, as Tableau enthusiasts, hit the big start button. Now, what will start to happen as you hit that is, in machine learning, you'll create partitions of data. You want to train the model, but you also want to test it on data it hasn't seen yet. So we're going to automatically create data sets for you so that you can test and see how well your model is really performing. So we've automated that. Now we're going to start looking at different models. We're going to be looking at, we have our own models in DataRobot. Let's see if I can make these any bigger. Oh no. I won't be able to make that any bigger, I don't think. Oh, here we go. So in here, there's many different model types. You'll see Python. You'll see R. The little robots are custom models that DataRobot has built. We'll see TensorFlow, ValPal-Rabbit, also XGBoost. There's many types of models. And this is going to run 20 models at a time. And in the past, I would have done one model at a time, looked at how it performed, and started again. There's another thing happening behind the scenes as these models are being developed. So as we go through these models, it's going to rank them on how well it's performing. So it's a champion-challenger test on how well these models perform with each other. And as they get ranked and modeled, we can see how they're performing. And it's going to keep going through the list and keep measuring them on how well they're doing. So what is it actually doing in the background? Let's look at one that's already been cooked. So when it's completed, I'll have 80 models, and we'll also put tags on here for what's been recommended. So if you're not a PhD and you don't know what log loss means, we'll provide some guidance for you on which ones you should think about. And what DataRobot did in the background was all the data prep steps that you would have had to manually drag and drop and experiment with and try to figure out for each different type. So these are called blueprints. Think of blueprints like recipes. First you do this data prep step, then you do this data prep step, and then we did all these. We picked a model, and this is what our 200 data scientists are working on, is there's different data prep steps for each algorithm type to get the best performance. Again, historically, I thought I was good when I was doing this manually, but the machine beat me. I didn't know what I didn't know. As you go through and you explore, each one of those recipes for different algorithms have different steps. If you do want to understand what DataRobot's picked, you can pick a step and look and get the documentation for it. Maybe there's white papers for it, or you just want to understand why did it do this. You can dig in and look. But continuing to explore, and what most analysts will do, and even my data scientists, just to get a quick understanding of what might influence outcomes, is looking at this Understand tab. The first thing, and I think the easiest way to describe this, is what matters most in your data. If you have hundreds of, maybe thousands of variables for an outcome and you're not really sure, you can quickly, iteratively experiment with DataRobot to find out what truly influences that outcome. So in this case, with the healthcare example, often you're brought into the hospital. If you keep coming back, we know you're very sick. So that makes sense. That's another thing. We have specialties. So what is the specialty? Might be, is it kidney failure? Is it heart failure? Did you just break your arm? I mean, there's many reasons why you may be readmitted. But we can see what matters most and doesn't. Probably one of the most powerful visualizations that you can use in DataRobot as data analysts is feature effects. This might be known for my data scientists as partial dependence plot. And what this does, if you have dimensions in your data, we call them features in data science. For each one of these, we can isolate that single variable through the whole one and then know how that specific variable will influence an outcome. So in this case, the transfers not mapped, we can look at how that influences. Making it a little easier to see is maybe one of these. So in this case, for inpatients, if you've only been in there once or twice, it's a higher probability you might get readmitted. And as you start to look, the more often you come back, probably the more health problems you have. So as a human, again, looking to make sure, does this model make sense? Can my business trust this? You'd explore these different visualizations and try and look and see what matters. And at last Tableau conference, I had one of the banking business analysts, not a data scientist, tell me he found 200 million in money laundering in this visualization because the data scientists didn't know the business rules and weren't able to decipher what he thought was strange in this. So that's where you can provide a lot of value in the visualizations as well. Taking it one step further, we can go to prediction explanations. So in prediction explanations, what we have for each one of these is we can look at the top reasons why it may be readmitted to the hospital or why not. And you can compute and download all of this, and that's what I was showing inside of that Tableau. For these red ones, you can see the specific reasons, the weight, how many emergency room visits, 25 medications. That's why this one will be probably readmitted. Expired, anyone know what expired means? That means you passed away. You won't be coming back. So that makes sense. So it's these types of things where it really makes the model make sense to you. Some other things that my Tableau analysts really like, and even the business itself, are some of the insights from the models. So thinking of something as simple as maybe as visualization specialists, we might not like word clouds, but for the nurses in a hospital that don't want to know how to interpret charts, a word cloud can be very, very easy. Red, meaning more likely to readmit, so heart failures, and you can see all these other congestive heart, infarctions, that's a heart. And then you can look at reasons why someone might not be readmitted. Obesity, so you won't be necessarily being readmitted just because you're a little pudgy. Some other things you can do is maybe you just want to find fraud or things that are different, or just the patterns not matching, they're strange nuances. We just have a list of all the records, and we put a score on it. Why is this different from the others? Just looking at that. And to dig a bit further, we can even, if you have free text, looking at different reasons to analyze the text. For each of the visualizations, we have the ability to export this. We can export these as images. Quite often in these global variables for the whole model itself, you'll just maybe use the data set so that you can visualize it in Tableau like Bridget was visualizing it in the dashboard. Or you can use APIs in R or Python and just call them live and visualize that as well. There's other ways you can deploy. So going back to our model, we say, well, this model makes sense, and it looks like it's a high-performing model. Let's go ahead and we were ready to deploy this. With predict, there's a few different ways that you can predict. You can just upload and download a data set. So if I want to take a data set, I just drag this on. I can automatically just run batch predictions and get the answers and just download it again. And people will do this just to explore the results and to, do a quick POC with their business or just get some quick answers from the data. You can then compute the predictions and then just download them automatically. It will apply the model for you. So very simple, no programming required to do that. Other ways, you can deploy APIs, you can deploy to different databases. Lots of folks that deploy models often will put them in a database. So once you have it in a database, you can put it in any application. So what I have here is it's a simple select query. I'm sending in new data, and we're going to head and we're going to save it in this table. And we're pointing to DataRobot in SQL Server just to score this data. And when we run this, now those prediction explanations that you have seen, now you can just connect to them as a database table to democratize insights within an environment where you have governance and control, role-based security, and you can leverage all the different types of permissions that you've already set up in your Tableau environment, but now you're just adding predictions to your applications very simply. So what this looks like, when you have a model deployed, you'll want to make sure it stays healthy. And we'll say, let's go ahead and deploy, and we're going to start using this model, and we're going to give it new data. Over time, models can change your data, and life changes, and the predictions might not always stay consistent. So we can look at the health of our model. We can see quickly, I've done a lot of predictions today, showing this demo. I can get a feeling for how healthy it is. I can look like today, we're at the conference, I have a lot more predictions. Over time, we call this model management and monitoring. We can see good, risk, and bad. As your model's predictions start to not perform as well, we'll tell you why. So it's the number of medications now is affecting your reliability of that model. So we can continue. In this case, diagnosis has changed, and it's changing some of the outputs. When they start to get red, okay, we're looking again, it's lab procedures, diagnoses, number of inpatients, and we can say, well, do we want to look at this model and update that, and do we want DataRobot to do that, or do we want to do that? And we can see, normally what you would see is much more activity. I'll show you one with more activity. But as the spikes in time, it's also changing in performance. So you'll want to then ensure your model stays healthy. And to give you a feeling for what that looks like, just with a different model that has many more predictions, this is what it might look like with one with more predictions over time. So you're getting a sensation for where that would be. If DataRobot sees an error, I'll go to this side this time. If DataRobot were to see an error, lots of times, maybe the data refresh, your ETL job, failed that night. In this scenario, you might see, well, the data didn't show up here, and sometimes we'll even show you a warning sign that will say, there's a problem here with your data. If you're in a regulated industry like banking, for example, and you need to document your model, or even for best practices of looking at your model and what is it doing, we also have compliance documentation. And this is really good even if you want to look at, this is a new way of looking at data, having the machine make decisions and understanding your reasoning. And a lot of times you'll make a model and you may not have all the data you want. So with using these types of reports, we'll provide in DataRobot an example of what a compliance report might look like. So in this case, we have all the different topics and automatically generated for you with guidance on what areas from documentation of a model you may want. The model results, is it dependency, the data sources, the assumptions that were made in the data, your methodology, and all the way down to the specific algorithms that were used, and etc. So there's all sorts of documentation as well created for you. And again, coming back to where you end up is democratizing that model again in here. So now as we look in here, you can see we've shown you where some of these things have come inside of DataRobot to then put into your model. The What If extension is available in the gallery. It is, you're free to download and experiment with it. How this usually, and I recommend best practices for deployment, is putting the models in a data pipeline. Again, we have our Python APIs. We have Alteryx tasks for connectors. We have a SQL Server stored procedure that makes it super easy to just use SQL code in a pipeline. But usually you'll put it in a pipeline, store it here, and then just consume and point any BI or ETL tool to it. The technology now is very easy to get started. We've removed a lot of the barriers. The difficulty still is people. It's understanding what AI is. We had a customer in London say his executive sponsor wanted to meet AI. He thought AI was a person. So you have to remember that people, they don't really know what they're looking at. So for you, the art of storytelling is usually explaining to them, going ahead and mocking up some predictions, running a quick model, even if it's not a very good model, just to sell the idea that you have with a vision and a use case. For your storyboards with this, and this is what we'll deep dive into tomorrow, deep dive into telling stories with data. The feature impact would be what you would use, what matters most in influencing your outcomes. Then looking at your relationships of the dimension in the case with heart failures, or how many medications was I on? Was it 1? Was it 25? That most likely will make me readmit. Understanding the reasons, again, why someone would readmit. Looking at performance, but most importantly, the bottom line impact. What does this mean for the business? So for each prediction you make correct and incorrect, you can assign costs to that. Maybe for every readmission, you save the hospital 10,000 euros, and you can start adding that up each time. And that really puts a bottom line to the business as to what that means. And again, as data analysts, you should be really good at that. So to dive deeper into some of those topics tomorrow and the how-to, adding values to these and really communicating with the business, selling the vision, the visual process flows, I'll be describing that tomorrow. In the meantime, you can learn more by trying DataRobot with your own data. It's a starter kit that's available on DataRobot.com. You can sign up for that. We also have a webinar. Let's go to here. This webinar is a whole hour, so if you didn't get into tomorrow's session, you can see the whole hour session. And for test drive, if it's a frequently asked question, you want to play with it, right? So to play with DataRobot, sign up for a test drive and let them know if they reach out to you that you're a result of Tableau conference. So in the meantime, do I have any questions? I know there's only 2 minutes.